Welcome back. This might potentially be our last little live cast for a while because Switch Aotearoa has had a 2-month streak of amazingness, and now we might just see what we're doing. Okay. It's been awesome. But today on Benevolent Banter, we are here with a fellow that I haven't seen for about 8 years.
Yeah, I know. Gosh, time flies. You haven't changed a bit.
Same. You haven't either. I knew you exactly when you walked in the door. What I love to do on the podcast is have guests introduce themselves instead of me introducing you. Okay. So, in your own words, Who are you?
Well, I think I've been grappling with who I am all my life. But the bare bones are that, I'm a guy with 2 kids, divorced. My ex-wife runs the company with me. I live on the North Shore, which when I grew up in Grey Lynn, I considered to be sort of the epicenter of National Party evil. But I've actually come to like it a lot, mostly because of the beaches and the lifestyle. I guess the potted history is that I went to Selwyn College as a young guy, and then I got whisked off to LA with my family at the age of 16. And
La La Land.
La La Land.
You got to meet lots of weird Californians.
Lots of weird Californians.
Still surrounded by them, apparently.
And then I've had a long sort of varied series of careers in the creative industries. So I was an actor.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
I can see that.
Yeah. And then I made a little documentary, and I leveraged that into working as a second camera assistant for a production company in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And a year later, I was directing primetime TV.
Wow.
And I've done that for about 16, 17 years. But
overachiever, right? That's what we're getting at.
Overachiever, but each time I've started from ground zero again as I ditched the previous one. So interesting, but also all that hard leg work where you know how to do something, but it takes people years to actually get that you know how to do it, which I think is sort of what every contractor or small business owner, that's the complaint that they have, right?
Is that a hint for me in my new life?
Well, I think you've got a pretty good profile and you've done some amazing work, and lots of people know who you are. So I think you've got a pretty good start there.
Thank you. There were some tears this week.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah. So Reuben has said, very thankfully from my perspective, that he would come and have a chat today. Reuben is a storyteller as well.
Yes.
And by as well, I mean as to all of the things you just said. And that's the context through which I know you, and the lens through which I know you is I worked with you, and we said 8 years ago at Mercury Energy, and I think you were one of our main conduits of storytelling for the Starship side of the partnership that we worked on through Mercury Energy. And I just remember how you would walk into a room with your crew, not many people, but cameras can be scary.
Yeah.
The second that somebody is asked to speak openly and with vulnerability, and there's something recording them, as we know with this podcast and all of these, it can be really nerve-wracking, but somehow you are able to get people to not only relax, but to share. What is that secret sauce there?
I think for almost every human being, my take on it is that our strengths are also our biggest weaknesses, and obviously vice versa. All through my life in school, I had trouble being the one that kind of shone or had the most charismatic things to say or something. I mean, I couldn't talk to girls till I was 20.
It took me till I was 35, so we're good.
We should share some tips.
Yeah.
And I think that I was always hypersensitive. I grew up with parents who fought a lot and were difficult, creative, tempestuous people. And I don't know whether that had anything to do with it, but I was always hyper aware of other people's moods and feelings, and I'd ask a lot of smart questions to try and figure out what might happen. And and I think also going through elements of pain in childhood, I guess we all do, but I think I'm pretty far from being, your classic narcissist. I'm more like overly sensitive. And so I suppose having empathy. Having empathy for people. And I guess when I go in there, on a set, the thing that I probably keep front of mind, and I'd advise, anybody that's a videographer out there or working with a crew, is try to minimize the sense of equipment.
That's right.
Yeah. I think it's the tail that wags the dog a lot of the time. And it's very easy when you've got time pressure and a client is wanting you, out of there and things, to kind of fuss with the lights and make sure that the white balance on the camera is fine and things. But you mustn't forget that the most important person there at that moment, there are two most important people there actually, and it's surprising who they are. One of them is the person that's going to be on camera, and the other one is the person that doesn't get a vote, doesn't get a say, is not in the room. It's the viewer.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think, I love the way you said that. We could talk about that for hours. I know from the last 18 years of my career in storytelling and in the creative side of the advertising industry, it is amazing to me how often, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about a media plan or we're talking about the creative execution of a story or an ad, how that most important person, who is the viewer, is completely left out. There have been times where I've sat around a table and gone, this is amazing, but who the fuck cares?
Totally.
Take your marketing hat off.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I would also argue take your internal comms hat off on occasion.
Yes.
We focus on trying to empower as many people as possible within organizations, because people within organizations are just as powerful as the consumer. And if you leverage them right, which is a very sort of people as resources term, but if you do and you allow them to shine, then you get a huge amount of discretionary effort there and great ideas and things. But I would say that, a lot of the time when we make an internal video, of course there are stakeholders there and there's politics.
Yes.
And what can happen, I mean, not that long ago made a branding video for employee branding and recruitment. And it went through about 6 different departments, I guess. And each one of those departments looked at it and said, you know what? That scene is 90% accurate, but it's just missing that 10% that I would like to really kind of say exactly what it is that my department's about. Yeah. By the time all those, it was like death by 1,000 cuts. By the time all those political considerations that mattered to nobody else beyond that department had been made, the video lost its heart. Yes. It lost its moments where you saw an employee bubbling about client feedback on the screen and just overjoyed and high-fiving me behind the camera. That's and all that was there. Well, that was after hours of massaging the feeling in the room, and getting them into state, and then capturing that one moment. And that one moment was what we built the video around, because it said everything.
That's right.
everything
right.
for a viewer. My
That's
God,
right.
I want to work in that place.
That's right.
I'm seeing visceral
right.
energy and emotion. It's proof. However, the messaging, she said one or two things that weren't exactly right for one of the departments, and it was cut, and it was replaced with information. And, you know, I get it on one level, but what it tells me is there's still a fundamental misunderstanding around storytelling in organizations where they confuse information with
Inspiration.
inspiration.
Or even emotional connection. Oh, I feel you on this so
Yeah.
much. One of the so I just left the warehouse group, and I had joined in with a new kind of squad around internal comms.
Okay.
And one of the best things that the business did was it said to everybody, we want to hear your story. We want to empower you. And it wasn't just marketing bullshit language. It
Right.
was, we actually know everybody's basically got an iPhone or some kind of a smartphone in their hands. Put it right up in your grill, tell us what you're thinking, and share it. We are
Absolutely.
not going to police your words. We're not going to police your videos. And one of the strongest videos that came out of the beginning of it, I'm going to shout you out, Becky, was a woman called Becky who was in the marketing department. And she was, you know, driving to work. She just parked, and she started to record herself talking about this journey she was on. And then she looks and she goes, oh, I got lipstick on my teeth. And she literally went, oh, fuck it. And just went and kept going. She's like, this is real. And that video was mentioned by the CEO, by the chief
Yeah.
people officer, by everybody, because it was real. And it was
Absolutely.
her. And we went, okay, if she has that point of view, then we're safe too.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, if you find something interesting, chances are other people are going to find it interesting.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, any one person looked at that moment with the teeth and had a laugh, that tells you that pretty much everybody else is going to
That's right.
engage in that as well. So, no, I think that's wonderful that the warehouse group's doing that. Yeah, we're big fans of iPhone videos. In fact, we teach iPhone video workshops because we really believe that stories are important, and you should. For me, internal communication actually has to start being thought of like external communication.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
you're going to do that, then you need an internal communication campaign.
That's right.
And just as there is a branding campaign that hangs on something like a big, rich TV commercial, you can actually hang something on a really beautiful, and by beautiful I don't mean high production values.
That's
what I
right.
mean is beautifully told,
Yes.
beautiful human stories.
Yeah.
You can launch something with that, but why not leverage the power of your people to show some little success stories along the way that
It's huge.
dovetail with that?
That is so huge. I mean, there's so much science and data and information out there that says when people feel, and we keep saying the word empowered, but it's true. When they
Yeah.
feel empowered, or at least in charge of their own destiny a little bit, the business profit goes up, the engagement goes up, retention of employees goes up, and this it's just so important to allow people to have a voice that isn't perfect. Because even me, I mean, look at me. I walk into a room in like quadruple denim, and people may think I'm devil may care, but I know the politics at play. I've sat at the tables, and there are 9 times out of 10 things that I don't say or that I hold back because I know somebody will look at me and in some kind of corporate speak go, oh, that's not what we wanted to tell everyone. And I'm just like, yeah, but this is my story, and this is how I feel, and this is, maybe I'm scared today, or maybe I'm feeling uninspired. How do I let my colleagues know that so that
Yes.
they can go, here's a thing we can do together. Let's collaborate. Let's get you inspired.
See, I've never worked in the corporate world. I go
Yeah.
in all the time as this kind of fly-by-nighter. But
It's probably a lucky thing sometimes.
possibly, but it's interesting to hear you talk that way because, for me, I'm never really quite sure exactly where the corporate world is because we're exposed to the Simon Sineks and the Daniel Pingers and all of these guys that make sense, that talk humanity.
Yeah.
And so I tend to think that it's been implemented and that most people buy into it. But I hear from people like yourself that, no, there's a long way to go.
It's scary. It's
Yeah.
a scary thing when you get inside of a big corporate because there is still the work person.
Yeah.
There would be the work Reuben, and then there would be the outside the doors Reuben.
Right.
And that's so unsettling when leadership is either put on a pedestal to a point where people are like, I'm afraid to talk to the CEO,
Yeah.
or they're unreachable, and you feel like there's a difference.
Absolutely.
Which is in almost every corporate I've worked in ever. It's hard for people to feel like they matter or they know where they're going.
Yeah.
From my perspective, it's been the leaders who, Air New Zealand was a great example of this.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few members of the executive who not only were they good at sharing their stories through email and connecting with everybody, but they used to walk the floors.
Yeah.
You knew on a certain day at a certain time, different executives would be walking around and they just wanted to talk to you, and and they just wanted to hear how your weekend was.
Yeah.
To know how your kids are doing.
Yeah.
And this was before we had all of the internal communications tools where we could create a video and share that.
Yeah.
But how powerful would it be to go, hey, it's my Tuesday morning walk of the halls, come up and see me, and you just have that, whack it on an internal comms platform and go.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because we talk about top down, bottom up. And if you get the two of those things right, then you just have this absolutely amazing synergy.
That's right.
I kind of long for the day where I see some aspect of what the CEO is doing that is pretty much exactly mirrored by some aspect that the person with the least power in the organization is doing.
Yeah.
And you can see it, and perhaps even you see them coming together.
Yeah.
And that's about aligning with the purpose of an organization.
That's right.
Primarily.
That's right.
So you can look at the tasking, and the tasking's different, but what is the motivation behind the tasking? Yeah.
That's the big thing. And I think unless the stories and the content that's put out has that as completely wide open and visible, then there's always something in the back of your brain going, what are they actually saying?
Yep. I'll tell you what, though, to be sympathetic to CEOs, what I've found is that many of them are just petrified of being on camera, of telling their stories. And sometimes they're petrified, if they're particularly evolved, they don't want to make it all about them.
100%. I think that's most of it too. And potentially, and this is just my experience of it being in corporates, as I've done the climb, is that it's just that. The CEOs, once you go up and you speak to them, it's just a hi, hello, how's your kids, how's your family? And people go, oh my gosh, you know them? And it's like, yes, I said hello. Yeah. It's one of those things, but most of the time they're going, I want other people to talk. Yes. I don't want it to just be me. I don't want to be a figurehead. Yeah. So please, go talk to someone else. But then sometimes everybody else goes, oh, well, why aren't we seeing more of them? So there's a
that's
balance.
That's about a value judgment and a philosophy. And
yes.
Storytelling is not about that. That would be a through line and a theme. So storytelling just has certain characteristics that you can't compromise on. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Made a video for a very large retailer, and it was around rolling out their new purpose, their vision and values across the organization. Now, there's a new CEO there now, and that video that we had done featured a range of different people going about their work, but talking to those values and living them on camera.
Nice.
It also had the CEO going around and doing his part.
Yeah.
Now, the new CEO will need to redo the video and take out that CEO because, of course, he's gone.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to appear in the video because he doesn't want it to all be about him. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the problem. Nobody working on the ground there, tasked with loading up shelves and sweeping the floors or whatever it might be, can actually credibly talk with any authority about the helicopter view of the company.
That's right.
And so even though you want to democratize it, the fact is there's a thing called reality and truth.
Yes. And
you can do a video without the CEO in it, but you need to somehow frame it very carefully in that way. Yeah.
View,
so for me, the best videos are where a CEO can speak like he, own his job.
Yeah.
Talk about the high level things. Talk about especially singing the praises of his people.
Or hers.
Or hers. Absolutely, absolutely. But everybody's there still to do a role.
That's right. That's right.
And so again, there are certain things that if you ignore them, there's an elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And the elephant in the room is what kills almost all corporate stories.
That's right. That's right. And that elephant is like a big elephant too, for the most part. It's bright pink. We can all see it. It's got like the Dumbo ears and a little whirligig hat. Like you know what's missing if something's not being said. And I'm a big fan of consistent messaging.
Right.
Hugely. But if those consistent messages also include consistent elephants, it is really hard to say, here, take your medicine every day, when really you want to be, having something a bit sweeter or something a bit more nutritious for lunch when they're going, here, take something, and you're going, you need to just tell me.
No, absolutely. I think the right strategy for this, and I don't think that we tend to think of internal comms as strategically as we should, or at least with storytelling, as its backbone. I think that the place for the elephant in the room is right at the outset. So you start with a bang. You start with a really well-considered video that says, listen, we're kind of in the shit here on this matter, and I'm going to own it. Yep. Some of you have to own it. This is the backstory to it.
Yeah.
The good news is we know what it is. We're going to forge ahead because you guys are amazing. And we can do this.
We can do it together.
And here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And we won't get there overnight because it's a journey. But man, think about this vision that we could all go to. Just imagine where we can take this.
Yeah.
We're going to take our first steps now. Bang. End of negative water cooler conversation.
That's right.
People go, well, they were honest with us. The one doubt that I had, they've actually addressed. And they've given us a vision. Then sweeten it. Show some little victories along the way.
That's right. What were the actions that have been taken?
Yeah.
Share those. Because I totally believe that. I've been really lucky in my career with the businesses I've worked for, because I felt like each place had its own little heartbeat. And there was always something good and purposeful to drive it. Maybe that's these rose-colored glasses I just wear consistently. But I've always felt like it was so easy to go from like Mighty River Power to ANZ, and ANZ to Air New Zealand, Air New Zealand, like to NZB. And all of those places were so different and so nuanced. But there was always something driving and a story that pulled me into that place.
Well, that's why you were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just wanted to understand the betterment of the people more than just the bottom line. And each of those places had that kind of inbuilt into it.
Absolutely.
And it was easier to quiet the negative.
Yes. When
the positive had a little happy tickle every once in a while.
Absolutely. I mean, address the negatives, but it's like a manager's feedback to a staff member, right? You've got to have 5 positive moments of feedback for every negative.
Positivity sandwich, right? The tiny little meat in the middle is like and here's what we should work on.
Yeah. How do you move people? How do you change an organization? That's something that's just been fascinating for me, and I guess that's something that you've been working on. Yeah. And it is all about, first and foremost, how do you move people emotionally, but how do you not bullshit them? Because it can't just be a lot of bells and whistles that are emotionally pleasing.
And it's also one of those things, too, we talked about, like, especially with internal communications and growing employee engagement, colleague engagement. It's funny because most people talk about corporates, and I know I've used those words willy-nilly even just while we've been speaking, but I truly believe that corporates are humans. Like, there's lots of humans that make up this machine, this business.
It comes from the Latin term corpus, which is
right.
the interrelated parts of a body.
That's right.
All working together.
And I think the more we can pull that apart and see that we are all a beating heart of this bigger beating heart, then it's easier to tell stories.
Yes.
But you and I talked about before we started recording how scary it is for people to tell their own stories. What are some of the things that you have seen that help people feel more comfortable telling their stories?
Well, on the one hand, there are slightly manipulative things coming from real TV.
I'm listening. Can I apply these at home?
I think it's a little bit like flirting. You go in there, you make a little wisecrack about something. You see the dog, you say something, I don't know what it is, but what you don't do is go lights, camera, action.
Oh.
Yeah. So you kind of ease people into things, and you look around, and then at a certain point, you address the elephant in the room, which is, what the hell are we going to do here today?
Yeah.
and you talk to them for a little bit. One of the things that I say is, I'm just a documentary maker, essentially. I haven't written a script. This isn't my drama.
That's right.
This is your story. You're more the director than me.
Yeah.
You know way more about what you do, about your job, your hopes, your dreams, what turns you on, all of that stuff than I do.
Yeah.
And I have a limited time to be here as your faithful servant.
That's right.
To try to bring that out and do justice to it.
Yeah.
And so if you can be just brave enough to feel like you can take a risk and tell me things, let's go with it, because I don't know what I don't know.
That's right.
So please tell me, and I'll ask active listening questions, of course.
Yeah.
And then I say, I'm going to watch this, and I'm going to watch all of this material.
Yeah.
And I've got an editor in mind that has a heart and mind.
Yeah.
And they're a human being,
Yeah.
and they're going to watch this, and they're going to approach you with care and respect, and they're going to take out the bits that don't do justice to your story, and they're going to leave in the bits that do. And as much as possible, I assure them that I'm going to show them the final cut. Now, that's anathema to you when you're in TV.
Yeah.
Because to allow people to cut out the rough edges and things in TV, you wouldn't be left with a TV show, unfortunately.
That's right.
But these are not stories that depend on conflict and jeopardy so much.
That's right.
They're just about heart.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the tricks in TV, it's very easy to tell a journey because you've got all those story points that great stories have, which is built around conflict and problems.
That's right.
So the big trick in corporate videos, I'm segueing slightly here, but is how do you build storytelling elements into something that
could potentially not have that many.
Can potentially not have that many because, you know, you're going in and it's primarily about celebrating, and it's primarily about, you know, these are good people that have agreed to be with you. Don't shit on them.
That should be just a life lesson.
Yeah.
You know?
And usually people, they go, okay, I'm the director. All right, so it's up to me to tell. And I say, think of me as your kind of Aunt Ethel.
That's going to guide you.
That you love and you trust and you know.
Yeah.
But she's a bit doddery and she doesn't really understand everything that you do. So please help her to understand by not using jargon.
So that's the way that you get people to remember the viewer at the other end of the thing.
Exactly. Somebody that's a lay person.
Yeah.
Talk in your own words, not in the lingo of your corporation.
That's right. That's right.
And the other thing I do is I just shoot the crap out of things.
Same. It's amazing how much magic you can find in B-roll, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And in fact, every moment of B-roll that I shoot, I don't think of as B-roll.
Same. Yeah.
So what I try to do is I never roll with the sound off. I never roll thinking this is going to be wallpaper and just pictures, because I'll be watching something and some funny little thing will happen and I'll say, bet you didn't think that was going to happen. And there'll be this magic moment that occurs.
Yeah.
You know, and so the 20 seconds before that, maybe the 20 seconds after it, I've got my B-roll, but I've also got content.
A little bit of magic.
Yeah.
What have you noticed recently, and this is more on the corporate side of content stuff. I know what I've noticed from internal at big corporates. What have you noticed from just the amount of content that corporates are after? Do you see the glut coming?
Yes, I think it's I think it's good and bad.
Yes.
There's two sides to it. You have to be really careful about producing not just egalitarian content, like, hey, you know, Martha, go shoot, you know, I don't know, the tap running, and we'll put that out there because your view counts. You actually still have a responsibility to create things that are pertinent and worthwhile, don't waste people's time. So there was a large corporate that for a long time, I don't know if they do anymore, they would put out posts on LinkedIn prefacing, you know, their latest intern that had joined the business, and wasn't Joanna's video absolutely amazing, capitalized. And I'd click on the video to see the amazing video, and it basically would have panning shots of the cafeteria. After watching 3 of those, it was like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I'll never watch another
Unfollow.
one.
Yeah.
So don't do that to your people. It's all very well to have yammer.
Make
but
it
if-
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it important.
So I guess it's who's curating that is probably pretty important.
And I think
You'd know more about that than me.
for me, the biggest struggle is that everybody, because we have so many different channels now,
Mm-hmm.
everybody feels like we need to fill all of the different channels
Right.
instead of going, where are people? And sometimes in some businesses, the most important channel you can use right now is still email.
Yes.
So it's great that the whole business is on this internal communications tool.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially, the fact that we are driven by our meeting schedule and emails that pop up when we watch everybody, maybe that's where we should put our most pertinent information.
Mm-hmm.
And just testing and trialing it. The amount of content that goes out that is myopic and that is to what almost to what you talked about earlier, the 10%, the 10%, and the 10%. It's everybody going, this is why it's so important that we have to use the Oxford comma. And I'm just
Right.
like, just tell me about grammar and why it matters to me. Tell me about punctuation, but don't tell me I just have to think about an Oxford comma. You know, it's
Yeah.
one of those things where, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Who is your audience and what are you trying to say? If you are just talking to hear your head rattle, stop.
Absolutely. And this is the problem with building capacity, but not caring about the content, the quality, and the audience.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to handle that within a corporate, except to say something that Steve Jobs talked about, which is people with taste are rare.
Mm-hmm.
Those people that can create with taste, other people can see it once it's done.
Yes.
So get someone smart in
Yeah.
to oversee
them.
that stuff
Yes.
and trust them. And storytelling and editorial, they're run by a person, not a committee. And when you turn them into a committee
Yeah.
and give them the power over it, and every stakeholder has a say, you end up with just mush.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
I have had a very, very lucky career in that when I decided to go with social media, and at the time everyone was like, you'll never earn money, it's a flash in the pan, and now everyone's like, what do we do if it's off? And I'm like, remember the tenets of marketing. It's a different channel.
Yes.
But because of social media and because it was so new and unfounded, and I was just one of those nutsos who was like, I'm going to go do that because I think there's power in stories
Yep.
and in, strangely enough, connecting with people.
Yes.
Because of that, I've been able to create and not by committee for many years.
Yeah.
I'd say there was a good decade where I would go, ANZ was great, Air New Zealand was great, Mercury was great, NZME was great. They've all been great so far because I've got a vision.
Mm-hmm.
I know the business strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I know business objectives. I know the marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I know marketing objectives. And I know the layers above it for media and spend and messaging out by different verticals of audiences.
Yeah.
Cool. All that nerdy shit aside, what would make me feel really good if a brand put it out into the world? And I've been able to go, you know what? I think we need an activewear video.
Okay.
And people go, oh, an activewear video. And I'm like, yeah, I think we need that.
Uh-huh.
And with a really small team, we go, okay, let's go create that. Let's tell a story. The reason we need an activewear video is because we are going to be sponsoring a marathon. And this marathon is going to be run in activewear.
Yep.
And here's how we tie it into the business and make it fun and have an emotional tug. And it has been so liberating for one person above me to go, yes.
Right.
Instead of going, we need merch and we need this person and we need that
Yeah.
and then it becomes just a really boring price and product ad.
No, absolutely. And I think because people are scared of failing, and also when their opinion is asked for, they feel pressured to give one,
Yeah.
even when it's maybe not necessary.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the biggest, sort of most mature comments, I think, that could come from the head of a department that's been asked to vet a piece of storytelling might simply be, you know best.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a very magical team. I'm going back to Air New Zealand again, but there was 5 of us that did brand social media there. And I had a girl who has now become family. Well, all 5 of the girls have, but Claire. Claire was the videographer. She was my right hand. We would come up with creative ideas, and Clary would shoot them, and I'd be with her, and it would just be the 2 of us, and then she would do the magic. She would do the editing. She would understand the tempo. She's in New York now, just caning it. Fucking caning it. Like,
That's wonderful.
You'll see Clary for president one day, I'm sure. But the beauty of that relationship was simply in that. She would come to me with something, and I'd go, that's really good. There's one thing I'd like you to do. And often it was just, maybe flip the narrative, put the end to the beginning, maybe do this.
Yeah.
And then she'd go, okay. And she'd go, sign it off. And I'd go, no, you're better at that than me.
Yep.
I trust you, go. And the I trust you, go has always been the best stuff we've put out across my entire career.
Absolutely. In TV, it's not a corporate, and we're not taught how to manage. So what you do in TV is you get really, really good at something like directing or camera work or editing or whatever it might be, or producing. And then you're given a promotion into a different role. And what you do is you micromanage the person below you because you don't know how to delegate.
That's right.
Yeah. And that was, a bridge that I had to cross when I became a business owner, with editors.
Yeah.
Is that I wanted to be very prescriptive. And what I found was that just in the end, it made everything worse.
That's right.
And I think the key is, of course, that you have to hire really talented people. And it's a cliche, but they have to be better, at least at their job, than you.
100%. If you're better at them than their job, you hired the wrong person.
Yeah, exactly. So now that's been quite wonderful, because not only do you see, people in your team blossoming, as it were, but you learn to trust yourself, and then it frees you up to start thinking about bigger things.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Delegation, I feel, is one of the hardest leadership tools to learn, because it is that kind of, I don't want to fail.
Yeah.
And because this is from my department now, or from my business, if it's not right of what I think is right, it could fail.
Yes.
I had that feedback, luckily, very early on in my management career from somebody who I trusted hugely, and his name's Aaron Ward. He owns a business called Ask Nicely. You know Aaron? He was
I know Aaron. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah.
So it was Aaron. He's got a lot to answer for, really. I almost took that red pen away from him 1,000 times and threw it. But he really helped me hone my skills of delegation and going, here's your sphere of influence. Allow others to live in theirs.
Yeah, wow. It's a great...
Which is pretty powerful, right?
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. So
Yep.
Don't let that go to your head, Aaron.
I want to catch up with Aaron, actually. I always want to get his advice.
He's in Portland.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly smart man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose one thing for me in making my product is I always think about that end user, but I don't necessarily think about the two-way communication coming back and forth like a ping pong ball. But that's something that you deal with. What are your thoughts on...
Oh, I see what you've done. You've just flipped this conversation. The two-way conversation and the beauty of the democratization of communication via social media is literally what gets me up and humming every day from a professional standpoint. Creating videos specifically for TV or the old school advertising. I love it how advertising agencies are like, this isn't a hero video. This is just a motion image story arc. And I'm like, it's a fucking TV ad. You're starting at a TV ad because you don't understand social media. We'll get better at it. But the beauty of social media is it has forced me over the years to change the way I think about how I cut and produce videos.
Okay.
And even when it comes to hero videos, the way that I build in dependent on a channel always goes hand in hand with how humans are using it. So I like to say I'm not a digital native, but I'm a local.
Okay.
to all the places in which I play. So same with, I'm not a native New Zealander, but I
Yes.
can walk in any coffee shop up in Ponsonby. I can go over to the shore, Remuera, and people are like, hey,
And you
girl
can
in the
say,
double
yeah,
denim.
nah.
Yeah, nah, mate. Hi. Right? So you're a local, people trust you. You
Yeah.
don't have to be a native to be
Sure.
trusted. But you can build into your videos interactive qualities.
Interesting.
Right? So you can build in a question and answer. You can build in something that allows you to cut down and then put it into an Instagram story and have a poll between it.
Okay.
So when I think about the creative iteration and ideation of even small campaigns and even internal comms campaigns, my brain goes wide and deep because I'm like, there's so much amazing information and conversation. I really, in my heart, the conversation is what I'm after.
Is what drives you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you would know more about that than me, and I'd love to learn a little bit
Yeah.
from you about that. My first priority is to tell a great independent story.
Yeah.
And then we often look at how can we break this up into 30-second
Yes.
pieces to sort of supplement it. But that whole kind of user experience, you know, in social media, I
Yeah.
mean, that's really fascinating, and there's a lot to it.
I mean, you wouldn't create an Instagram stories story the same way you'd create a long form with cut downs.
Right.
You
Yeah,
would treat that the way, how does your friend use it?
Yes.
You'd have to, I mean, there's best practice, right? Get right up in your grill because it's very one-on-one. It's very intimate, that face-to-face. How would you go, I'm going to tell this 15-second story arc, and then boom, there's a question and a poll, and then you go, whoa, and then you go into the, you know, like the VR, the AR, there's all of that, but it has to be seamless and feel like you're not being a cool corporate.
Right.
Unless you're like a dad joke corporate, which is hilarious when they're like, I'm just all knees and elbows and awkward at a barbecue, but you still love that dad. That's fine too.
But here's what I find interesting. Those corporate messages, and the ones that are done really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, not that the police are a corporate, but I think their social media teams
They're doing
fantastic.
a good job, yeah.
And every now and then you'll see it in, say, competition between, Burger King and McDonald's or something. How much of that is a team of people thinking around that stuff, and how much of it is one person that's just got wit and got the knack for how to put something out there or have some repartee on social media that makes sense?
I think it depends on the business and how they work with their agencies. So I think when you start to talk about businesses like McDonald's and Burger King, there'll be an amalgamation of those two ideas. So you'll have your agencies and your creatives, and sometimes they get together and they create, but sometimes you've got, your head scratchers that are like, brilliant. You can see it recently, right, with all of the spicy burgers. So I think McDonald's might have been the first, maybe it was Burger King to put theirs out first, and then they made this weird spicy face, and then the other brand did the same thing, and you're like, I see what you're doing there. And then it followed into social media, but it still felt really corporate.
Okay.
I worked with a fellow for many years, and at the warehouse group called Troy Rafferty Forbes. And Troy was on the podcast a few weeks ago. And Troy was one of like my cohorts of the grandparent age of social media, who just loves to see what's happening from a cultural standpoint, and then as part of a big brand go, ooh, this would be real funny commentary. In fact, the chief marketing officer at the warehouse group, Jonathan Waker, is amazing at that. Some of the little messages he'll send at night or used to send, and he'd go, oh my gosh, look what this brand's doing. How can we do that? And I thought, I've got a soulmate here, because that's how my brain just thinks.
Well, there's always a sort of zeitgeist out there, right? And
That's
it's like, how do you tap into that?
How do you tap into that at the right time?
Yep.
Because when I do my keynotes, I talk about this. It's like, it's cool to be a cool kid if you've been welcomed in. Again, it's that local kind of thing. Yeah, come on in, try to do the floss.
Right.
But most of the time, you're like me. Funny story. My wife and I were on a ferry coming back from Waiheke. Let's just say I'd had a little bit of wine before getting on the ferry. And I was like, I am cool. All the kids are doing the floss. I got up and I was trying to do the flossing dance. Yeah. And these little French kids who spoke no English were like, non, non, just yelling it from across the boat. And then they ran over and showed me how to do it, and I couldn't do it, and they just kept yelling, non. And I was like, I think that means no in French.
So at that moment, you were the embodiment of a large corporate.
That's right, trying to floss, when really I should have been waltzing, probably.
Good on you for trying.
I mean, the two-step, I can do that. Turn on some Garth Brooks, we're home.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. When you're working with big brands, I'm very, very curious. how do you get, who asks you in there? Is it somebody from the corporate comms team? Is it somebody from the content team? Like, what are the little magical webs you've got out there?
I think this is one of the challenges that we've found as a business is, we know that we ought to come in at a very early level and work with what the business objectives are and the strategy, and come in at that time and then go, right, this is how we're going to design your storytelling in your comms from woe to go, and we're going to measure it over the course of a year, and it's going to make a huge difference for you guys. What will sometimes happen is that we may get the odd call in from a CEO.
Wow.
And they'll have a pretty big problem. And then we'll get put a little bit further down the food chain. To discuss it with someone. But if it's come from the CEO, then we have quite a bit more leverage a lot of the time.
Strange how that works.
The disappointing element, if it doesn't come from a CEO or one of the major sort of C-suite types, is that there's usually been no budget allocated for good, high quality, and again, it doesn't have to be high production quality, but good, high quality storytelling in the video space, in say comms or HR or any of those areas. So there's a part of me that says, well, you guys talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. What we try to do at times is there might be different departments that could do with this video. And so we take a bit of money from each department, perhaps. The internal processes for each place would be different. But as far as like who commissions us, I mean, it can be really weird. It could be. I mean, we think we need to be known by 50 to 100 people within each corporate head office. Because at any given time, somebody's got some project that they've been tasked with making a success of, and they need their people to go along for the ride. And so this is an incredibly effective way of nipping negative water cooler conversations, creating enthusiasm,
getting people involved in the storytelling. It's amazing how once you feel involved in that process, the negativity falls away.
Absolutely. And then you've got traction, then you've got discretionary effort, then you've got, John from accounts is having a shower and he suddenly gets an idea for how something could work. And it's also, I mean, I used to be an artist, and one of the amazing things about the art school that I went to was this tutor that I had that had basically invented an entire grammar and vocabulary around different aspects of how you could read a painting. So within a few months, instead of us all making up our own sort of subjective terminology and trying to describe things as I'd done in previous art schools, we could suddenly say, oh, that moment there of atmospheric space, and we all knew what it meant. And
isn't that nice? It's like having the special language for your club. It's like having a community. It's like I love that.
Absolutely. And then it means that instead of trying to understand what you meant at the most basic level in communication, you can go further and actually talk about the really important stuff.
And that goes back to the purpose, right? That goes back to like the DNA of the business.
The DNA of the business. I mean, there's a part of me that goes, well, I would love to pivot a little bit in the direction of, I think we get so many insights going in with a camera that we probably do a more effective job than an agency tasked with finding your purpose. Because we actually go in and ask these really penetrating questions and see the reality of the situation.
Strange enough hearing it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, half the time it's caught on camera. And so it's interesting. I understand and I sympathize. I used to be quite arrogant about, why can't corporates come up with their purpose? I still can't come up with my purpose. I think it's got something to do with celebrating the beautifully human in people. But, I can understand why you'd struggle with, 10,000 staff to come up with a unifying purpose.
It's the business I've worked for, and we talked about this too earlier before we started recording. For me, has been Mercury Energy. And I think I came in, again, having Aaron there was a big part of that. Mike Larmer and Tracy Smithers, all of these beautiful humans, smart humans together. But instead of going, here's your purpose, and this is how you apply it, for 2 years almost, Mercury was like, here's where we think we need to go as a group. Let's find our backbone. Let's build it together. Let's understand what we think. And we came down to, when I just started, they'd come up with good energy. but it was never supposed to be forward facing or external until we really believed it. And it became one of these things where when we were in offices, just walking past each other in the hallway, when we were in meeting rooms, we knew what good energy meant. We knew what the different aspects of that meant. And a lot of it just meant empathy and kindness and connection.
Yep.
And it started to just seep into our work. It started to seep into the way we treated our customers. It started to seep into the business language, the rewriting of the brand handbook. And by the time the business took it externally, it was so hard for people to say something bad about it.
Yeah.
Because all of the staff were like, no, that's actually how we live here.
Absolutely. You wouldn't believe the amount of times actually that this particular example comes up or is brought up, but people within organizations say to me, our people don't know how to describe or defend us when they're at a barbecue.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you know, if you can get all that stuff sorted internally so that they feel inside and out that they can hand on heart support the business.
That's magic.
Yeah.
That's your magic.
Yep.
Then you've done it.
Yep.
You can check the watch because it is time.
Okay.
I told you it would go really fast. Hey, it goes real fast.
It's been great. It's been loads of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
You're not off the hook yet.
Oh.
Last thing.
Okay.
I love to hear about people who have helped you or changed your life. So I would love it if you would shout out a kindness warrior in your life. Somebody that you just embodies, you know, kindness and empathy and has helped you in your journey.
When I was 19, I came down with clinical depression and I had to pull out of university. And there was a shrink there that I'd been seeing to help with it. And he could no longer see me because I wasn't enrolled in the university. But he recommended that I go see someone. And he said, she's a little unconventional. She's an elderly lady and she'll talk to you whilst lying on her couch in her little one-bedroom brick and tile unit. And she wears a dressing gown. And her name's Dawn.
Yeah.
But she doesn't just take anyone. So you'll have to call her for an interview. And I did. And she grilled me on the phone. And I went and saw her. And she did everything that those other professional guys didn't.
Yeah.
They would listen to me, sympathize.
Yeah.
She just basically told me, believe in yourself, get your shit together. Life is not a dress rehearsal.
Obviously, I'm in my dressing gown.
Yeah. And as it turned out, as life went on, I mean, she'd charge $60 and see you for 3 hours if that's how long it took. And she claimed to work with energy and things. But every time I left that little tiny nondescript granny flat, I felt cleansed and amazing, and that the universe was brilliant and good. And along the way, I actually ran into some other people, very famous New Zealanders, who had seen her.
Wow.
And she died a little while ago, but she, I think she changed a lot of people's lives, and she'll never be famous, and she never wrote a book, and she never leveraged herself on LinkedIn or anything.
But she helped other people.
She was there. She was there.
So Dawn.
Yeah, Dawn.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. We both washed our hands, so we might hug. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.